Hi, I'm Shayla, and this is Moms Learning with Moms. This is a place where we learn about real experiences from real moms, and we just want to invite you to subscribe to this channel if you want to be part of a team of moms that learn and grow together. It's a great group. You learn a lot of information. I've got my friend Rachel here with me today. She and I are have been friends for about a year and a half. So her youngest has a condition, and it is arthrogryposis. He's 9 and it just is a fantastic young boy. He is so fun. And like she'll tell you, he knows no strangers. He is friendly and fun. And we just love him. Turn it over to you, Rachel.
Okay, so Joseph is my youngest child, and all my children are very big. I have a tall husband, and all my kids came out really big. They were tall and big. And from the very first ultrasound, he was measuring really small. And I thought, oh, that's unusual because that never happens with us. And and the doctor said, it looks like you might have a club foot. So, he sent me to get another ultrasound the next month. And I didn't worry too much about it. I know there's a lot they can do for club foot. It just wasn't a concern. And then we had another ultrasound. I don't know if it was the second one. Anyway, then he's like, oh, it looks like there's 2 club feet. And they couldn't tell me the gender of the baby. Just his hands were kind of down in that area. I guess he was being modest, covering up. And so they sent me to a specialist, and I went there, and that doctor said, there's a lot more going on here. It's like I could almost feel the panic. And I had 3 other kids, and it's funny because I made a very conscious decision. Until I know what I'm dealing with, I'm just not going to worry about it. And I did, amazingly. I didn't worry about it. And so I kept going back to the specialist, and it was, I don't think funny is the right word, but it was funny because, you always get so excited for the ultrasounds. And it's like every ultrasound I'd get more bad news, and it was just hard. And then this doctor finally said, you know what, I just don't know what's going on here. And he sent me to Cincinnati Children's, where I met with a team of doctors, and they did ultrasound and MRI and different stuff. And then they told me he has arthrogryposis, and I think I was 27 or 28 weeks along, and I had never heard of that. It's just physical. It means, so they couldn't move their joints when they were in the womb, so they just get stiff. So it's multiple contracture joints, or joints that are stiff. They don't have the full range. And cognitively, the kids are very bright. They're normal or very bright. And I think it's because what they do have is their brain, and so they exercise it a lot. So cognitively, they're very bright kids and adults. So I was pretty far along, and they hinted at, do you want to keep this baby? Donovan was with me, and we had never considered aborting this baby. And they gave me a confirmation this is a boy, and he had scoliosis, which goes along with arthrogryposis. And they said a third of these babies don't live past birth. And they have a really wide range of abilities. And they say the worst they'll ever be is at birth. As long as they survive, if they can live outside the womb, then they can only get better. Because what it is multiple contracture joints. So if they can breathe on their own, then they just need to get out and move around, because you need to move them around. So it was very interesting, because there I had my answer to what this was, and it was devastating. It was more devastating than what I thought. I had never heard of it. I just had no idea what it was. A scripture would come into my mind, and God told me, he said, I know this is going to be hard. I will be with you, and a lot of good is going to come out of this. And every time I would have a thought of, oh no, this is so scary, that scripture would come into my mind. So it was almost a constant. It was like he was catching me. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And so we went forward, with everything. And I knew the baby had scoliosis, and he was kind of upside down in like a slump in my womb. And so I'm like, well, what can I do? And I asked the doctors, I don't know, it's so dumb, but trying to relieve his back pain. I'm like, oh, his back must be uncomfortable. So I said, can I do handstands? And the doctor just laughed. He's like, sure, do handstands. So I do handstands like once a day, or we had a hill in our backyard and I would just lay upside down on the hill to try to help him out. I don't think it did a thing, but at least I felt like I was doing something. So these babies are delivered by cesarean, just because there can be a lot of complications. So they get delivered by cesarean. So I knew I was going to have a cesarean. None of my other kids had been cesarean. And we delivered him up in Ohio where my family was. So my parents would be there to help with the kids, the other kids and stuff. And so we did the cesarean, and it was kind of worse than we thought. And I think the doctors were surprised. At birth, both of his femurs were broken, and one of his humerus bones was broken, which are all the four largest muscles or largest bones. And so it was very traumatic and hard. And honestly, the doctors didn't think he was going to survive. And I wanted to see him. I didn't get to see him for a while. And then I remember that first night, I just couldn't sleep. And he was in the NICU, so I couldn't be in there with him. But they told me I could go and see him whenever I wanted to. And I went into the NICU, and there was a doctor that was like, he was a student. He just said, he's not going to make it. You need to plan that he's not going to leave the hospital. And so just make plans for that. And I just bawled. And so he had a breathing tube, and they couldn't really feed him. He was in so much pain from the broken bones. And I think that they didn't want to set his bones because they thought that would be traumatic. I don't know why, but they put just soft splints, and they just were letting him heal with the soft splints. But any movement was just so painful for him. It was hard. It was a really hard time. We decided we wanted to get him blessed in the hospital, and we got special permission for my brothers and my father to go in and do that blessing. And it was really interesting because it was like the next day he just perked up and he pushed the vent out. He pushed it out himself, and he was breathing on his own. And he really, I don't know, made a turnaround, or he really just showed the doctors, hey, I can do this, because they just didn't want to take him off the vent or do any of these things. And then he just started progressing little by little every day. And they did have him on morphine just for the pain and stuff. And I was anxious to take him home. And they said, he's got to meet these criteria. And he was getting there, but being on the morphine was always an issue. And so it was getting close. And I just remember one of the doctors, I feel like he said he'll be on morphine for the rest of his life. And I just said, well, hypothetically, if he's going to get off of it, how do I do that? And he explained, okay, you would do this much this day, this much this day. And eventually we went home, and then I did what he said, and I took him off of it, and he was fine. He didn't have any visible withdrawals from it. They made him these braces that his arms and legs were really malformed. So they made him these braces kind of so they would hold their shape, I guess. And really, they gave me this special pillow to take him home. I mean, people say, take him home on a pillow because you're afraid they're going to break. But quite literally, I think the doctors were afraid he was going to crumble in pieces with all
Mm.
those broken bones. And they kept testing him for all these genetic things, all of which came back negative. Um, but they did send us home with this special pillow to take him home on. Our journey began. It was interesting because he did have a hard time eating. Um, he had torticollis really bad, so his head was kind of twisted. Um, so I wasn't able to nurse him just because he couldn't really twist his head to nurse on both sides. And so he got used to eating with a bottle. Um, but something interesting, because I had these other kids and we'd go to the park, and so we'd still go out and do things. Um, but then, people see him and they look at him and they see all these braces that he's in, and you just see the pity in their face, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And and I would explain it. Nobody's ever heard of it. I mean, I had never heard of it. And they then almost inevitably, the next thing they say is, "Well, will he ever be able to walk?" And I said, "No, probably not. A lot of kids with arthrogryposis do walk, and maybe more than don't. I don't know. Um, a lot of people do walk, but just how he was, we didn't anticipate him walking." And it was so interesting because then they would be like crestfallen, almost like, what purpose is his life? I could see that in their face. I had that reassurance that God would be with me and that things would work out. And so I didn't ever feel like that. It was sad to me. People just, it was like, what purpose is his life? If he can't have a normal life, then what good is it? Um, and I did have a person or two say that, not in those exact words, but it made me sad for people not valuing people and what they can do rather than what they can't do.
Mm.
And I didn't know that until I had them. Once he could talk, or even smile, um, I just started to see this personality in him like no other kid I know that I've ever seen. He just has a really big, a very social personality. And it was amazing. It was a treat. I felt like I was a fly on the wall, and I got to see these really cool interactions that he would have with people. Because sometimes in the grocery store, so I would have his stroller or his wheelchair, actually, he's pretty much wheelchair, and I'd be pushing the wheelchair with one hand and pulling the cart behind me with the other hand. So both my hands are full. And I see people look at him and their faces pity or concern, like they see this child who's obviously disabled and they're sad for him. And then the next facial expression I see is this spontaneous smile. And I would know he's smiling at them. It was so fun. So just, they feel sad for him, but he only feels happy. And then he makes them smile. It was so fun. Or even like we would, once he started talking, he loved to talk to everybody. And I remember this happened more than once where we'd be walking in to the grocery store, I'd park, and then we'd be walking in, and he would see somebody a couple, like an aisle over in the parking lot, and he'd just say, "Hi." And they wouldn't say anything. And then he'd just say to me, "Mom, do you think they can't talk?" So it was so funny to me because it's like they're the one that's handicapped. They can't talk. So he like is feeling bad for them. He talks to everyone. It's just so fun. Um, he did go through a little period where his nieces and nephews, because he's the youngest in our family, but his nieces and nephews younger than him, he'd see them as babies and then they'd grow and then they'd start walking and he'd say, "When am I going to walk?"
Hmm.
And that was hard. And I have to say, when I found out I was going to have him and a little of what it would be like, I felt very unprepared for the ins and outs of everyday living. but I felt very prepared in truth because, my faith, I believe he'll be resurrected and he will have a fully functioning body just like anyone. And so I could teach him that with all certainty. Um, and I felt empowered that way. I could teach him that, even though, it's going to be hard and life will have its challenges. He can hope for that one day to have a perfect body, just like anyone else. And I would read him the scriptures that talk about it so he would know and feel that himself. Um, and that was really hopeful for me. When we lived in Kentucky, we had this house that we loved. It was awesome. And it was a blessing that we were able to get it. It was a log home and we were kind of in the woods and it was so fun, but it was so not functional for him. There were a lot of steps. And it was kind of tight. The rooms were kind of small and tight. We knew we'd eventually need a different house, more functional for him. And we're a one income family. So my husband works. He is a hard worker, but money, we're not flush with money for sure. And so we knew we'd eventually need a car too that we could haul a wheelchair around in. And so those were things that I was kind of like, okay, God, how are we going to do this one? You said you'd be with me. And I don't see financially how we could do these things. But my husband felt the need to apply for a different job. And he did that. And then this one came up and he took it. And so we made the money from the sale of our house. And when we bought it, it was a foreclosure. So we made more than what we bought and we put a lot into it. And so we were able to buy this awesome van. And I don't know if you know, handicap vans are crazy expensive. And it was amazing. So we found this one and it was a good deal as far as handicap vans go. And it was amazing, an amazing blessing. We really tried to avoid debt. So that was a big deal for us. And we didn't have to go into debt to get it. And my other kids, and you know this, they're all very big. And so we knew we'd need a big van and we got a really big van. So it's just awesome. It's like it was made just for us.
Clarify how big your kids are. I mean, you've got a 15-year-old boy who's like 6'5",
6'4",
and a 13-year-old daughter who is 6'2".
6 foot. 6
foot. Okay.
Maybe she looks 6'2" from your perspective.
I know, from my 5'2" perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then your 12-year-old son is.
He's at least 5'7", maybe 5'8" now. Yeah. They're growing like weeds. Yeah. No. So we needed a big van for my big kids. I felt like it was kind of miraculous. We wanted a house that we loved, but we needed a house that was functional for him. And then we saw this house online and we couldn't get over to it because we were in Ohio since we had sold our house and we didn't have a new one yet. And our realtor just videoed it for us. And then we just said, okay, put an offer in on it. And I felt like I should write a letter to the owner. And I talked to the realtor and she just kind of discouraged me. She's like, people do that all the time. It doesn't work. But I just felt like God was telling me, you need to write a letter and tell this person why you want the house. And so I did that. And we got the house. And we spoke to the previous owner later and he had higher offers, but he said the letter was what really made him accept our offer. So I was just thrilled about that. And I see our house as a blessing too from God that worked out. But I feel blessed and I feel like the house and the van were a huge blessing to us. And I definitely feel God's hand was in it. You know, it was amazing because my sister-in-law, you know, we told the whole family the condition he had, and she kind of looked up online and found a group. It's called AMC, Arthrogryposis Multiplex Congenital. And she found a group, and there was a young adult who had the condition that kind of started this group, and she would answer questions. And her name is Tracy Shock. She is amazing. And I got in touch with her and other moms through her. And it was just awesome because even when he was in the hospital, I had this network of moms that I could call. And one of them, I called her and I said, the doctor said he's going to die. And she said, I know, they told me that with mine too. It's okay, just hang on. And it was just awesome because I had all these moms that knew what I was going through and could talk me through it. Or all these kids, it's kind of their shape, how they are, this arm's twisted this way and that one. So they all come out different. And so we get together and we talk about, their shapes and, oh, what'd they do to his arm? Like the doctors to help him out. So we get together and we talk, and all the moms said, you need to go to this doctor in Philadelphia. He's the best. And people come from all over the world to see him. He's at a Shriners hospital. And there were ways that we could do it, like miracle flights. You can get plane tickets where people donate. And so you can get a plane ticket to go. And then the adult that flies has to pay $50. But that's amazing to get 2 tickets.
Wow.
And all you have to pay is $50. And then there was, I think it was Thrifty Rent-A-Car in Philadelphia, and they would give a discount for these families. So you could fly. And then I tried to get into the Ronald McDonald House that first time we went, and I couldn't. So I had to get a hotel. So that was kind of like my big unexpected expense. And I was like, we can't do this for very long. But it was over a weekend that I went, and I looked up my church there, and I went. This woman came up to me and just asked my story and how I was there and stuff. And I explained it. And she said, next time you come, stay with us. Stay with us every time. It was her and her husband, and their kids were all adults and out of the house. And I did it. The next time I went out there, I called them, and I got the rental car and then drove to their house, and they were amazing. Just like another set of parents, so amazing. And it was nothing but a blessing. And we still are great friends. So we saw this doctor, and he was everything everyone had said. He was really an amazing doctor. And it was awesome because I see tons of kids just like Joseph there. And I remember one time I saw this boy, and he was probably 8 or 9. Joseph was like a year and a half when we started. No, you know what? He wasn't. He was probably 6 months. He was 6 months. And then I saw this kid there that I hoped Joseph would be like. This kid was in a wheelchair, and he didn't really have use of his hands, just a little bit. And he would another kid was playing on an iPad or something. And I saw this kid swing his arm over and just kind of barely touch the screen. And he was like really playing, and he was super happy. And I talked to his mom a little bit. When we left that interaction, I thought, oh man, because I could see Joseph being like him. And I was like, it didn't dawn on me at the time. I should have asked tons of questions, because more questions came into my mind after. And amazingly, our flight home, they were on the flight, and we sat next to them. It was so awesome. So it was like God creating these opportunities for me all over the place. But what's interesting is the opportunities were through other people. So I just feel God's hand all the time, and it's through other people. Just really incredible. And I met all kinds of incredible people when we would go to Philadelphia. And we went for a year, and sometimes it would be every 6 weeks we were going, or sometimes it would be 2 to 3 months. We went for probably a year and a half. And we kind of got to a point that, I don't know, I would get stressed out with traveling. It's hard. I'd have all of his equipment and then luggage, and making the plane and making layovers and whatever. It just got stressful. And I don't know, I hit a tipping point where I thought, This doctor has been incredible, but I felt like we were at a point that his care was good enough. I might try to switch to go somewhere closer. And so I did that. And now we go to Cincinnati Children's, which is about 2 hours away. And then also when he hit about a year and a half, he started vomiting every meal, vomiting, and he had a hard time gaining weight. So it was kind of a big deal. And we didn't know what was going on. And they were casting his whole torso because of the scoliosis. And I thought, maybe he's getting the cast is too tight around his stomach or something. And so I'd talk to the doctor and he'd try to modify, but we just didn't know what it was. So we started seeing a doctor in Kentucky and we just weren't getting answers. It was hard. And then another mom said, you should have him tested for allergies. And I did. And several allergies showed up. And so we took him off those foods and the throwing up got a lot less. And then we switched doctors and we went to a GI doctor in Cincinnati. And then that GI doctor diagnosed him with eosinophilic esophagitis, which I didn't know anything about that, but it's multiple food allergies that it's just multiple food allergies. And so she took him off a few other foods and then the vomiting stopped. It was amazing because it was so painful and sad and hard for him for so long, just throwing up. And it was just really painful. His stomach hurt a lot. And so that was really awesome. Once he stopped being in kind of constant pain whenever he would eat. And so he has the arthrogryposis, but he also has EOE. So, and those are two different, they're not, and actually since we found out he has EOE, we found out his aunt has EOE and his uncle has EOE. And I'm positive his father has EOE, but doesn't like to go to the doctor. So he technically hasn't been diagnosed with that. He eventually had to get a feeding tube. I fought that for a long time. I really didn't want to do a feeding tube, but it has been a blessing and he's finally gaining weight. He's probably 43 pounds and 9 years old. He's just very, very small. So
he has a feeding tube now, or that was just back then when he was so young?
He does have a feeding tube now. I really fought the feeding tube. They put one in once they found out about the EOE because he was so thin and he was doing these surgeries on his back. And the back doctor was like, he's so thin. It's not really, he just didn't have the cushion in his back because he had growing rods. So he was concerned about the rods poking through because there was no fat on him. So we did the feeding tube and they did it through his nose. I don't always like listening to doctors. And so he gained some weight. He did the surgery. And then I was like, let's pull that NG tube out, that feeding tube. I'm done with it. And so we pulled it out and he lost the weight again. But there was no other way. So I just had to come to that myself. I probably fought that feeding tube for like 2 years that the doctors were encouraging us to do it. And finally we did, and it's been good. So now I embrace the feeding tube, but I hope one day he can get off of it. It's hard though. I've talked to a few other moms that their kids have EOE. There's just so much they can't have. It's really hard. And I don't want the rest of my family to be denied enjoying regular food. So Joseph, he still likes to eat things. And anyway, we're dealing with the EOE and the doctor now says he can have these other foods. But if he eats a lot of them, he still does. His stomach hurts and occasionally he'll throw up. But that's still something that we deal with. He gets feeds every night while he's asleep. It's like a drip every night, a little bit at a time. So it's like 500 milliliters throughout the night, between 400 and 500 throughout the night. And it just happens while he's sleeping. And the hope is that he'll keep eating during the day, because if kids don't eat through the mouth, they kind of lose the desire to do it after a while. But we hope he never loses that desire or ability. Eventually, I'd love to get him off the feeding tube and just have him get everything by mouth.
So the care of him, I mean, you and your husband must dress him every day, bathe him, and just
We do. Yeah, we dress him every day. We bathe him. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but he's a boy, so he doesn't always love getting baths. So maybe it'll be a while before he gets one. um, we're so busy, but yeah, we toilet him. He's got his own special toilet, but we have to put him on it and then take him off and dress him again. Um, and we feed him. He doesn't, his right arm, he has more use with, but it's locked in a straight position. So he can't bend it to feed himself. So we have to feed him by mouth and kind of do everything. He loves to play the iPad and he plays it with his mouth. So he'll lay on the floor and just touch it with his mouth. He sticks his mouth out and touches it or gets it with his nose. So, and he likes to read books that way. So we'll put him down and he'll flip the pages with his face and then read. But ideally, I would eventually like to there's eye gaze technology and stuff. And we're kind of working on that right now. With an iPad or something, he can turn the pages with eye gaze and it's like clicking. So we have some options there. We're looking into it and trying to figure out how we're going to work things out financially with doing it. There
his
are
his
definitely still
wheelchair
things.
though, he can like move with his head, right? He has
He
a
can, yeah. His wheelchair is really cool. It has a head array, so it's got a switch on each side and then one in the back. And then he has a little switch by his right hand that he just has to lightly tap, and that can put it in reverse, or it can do other functions. It can raise the seat or tilt it back if he needs to tilt back. It's really cool. And he loves that he can do it himself. he People are always amazed because you really can't tell how he's using it. He doesn't have the little joystick with his hand, and so people can't figure out how he controls it. And he doesn't like to tell him. He likes to tell him it's magic, and he doesn't like to tell him he does it with his head. um he did have some kids um push the switches without him, saying it was okay. So they were controlling his wheelchair and he just felt so vulnerable and out of control. It was really scary. And I think that's a big reason why he doesn't like to tell people how he uses it, because he doesn't want people to make him move with the switches. And you can understand that. Yeah, he has a really cool wheelchair. Insurance got that, and then he's on Medicaid, and they picked up the rest. Because honestly, his wheelchair cost more than the wheelchair van. So we were really grateful we didn't have to buy the wheelchair.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
How does he do at school? How do they help him with, I know he goes to school full time.
Yeah, he does. He has an aide that helps him, and they are awesome. They enjoy him. Um, there's a police officer that kind of is at their school sometimes and not. And the police officer like radared him going as fast as he could, and they just have fun with him. And then at gym, his aide sent me a picture of him bowling, and the other students will set up the bowling pins, and then they just kind of put it in his hand, and or he'll like hit it out of their hand. So everyone loves to help him. I remember when he was really young, even in preschool, his preschool teacher told me just how much he helped the other kids be happy and be helpful. And she said one of the kids who struggled behaviorally, they were meeting with him and trying to work out rewards that this little kid would get when he behaved. And one of his rewards that he wanted was to work with Joseph. And so they made that deal. When he behaved, he could get to be Joseph's helper. Really cute. And all of his teachers have said that, what a joy he is to have in class, and that he brings all the kids up. They're helpful, and he's fun. I feel like he's unique in that way. he doesn't feel sorry for himself. He's just happy. I don't know why he is that way, but he is. It's funny. We just were at the doctor last week and they had him doing a survey for his back and his growing rods. And a lot of kids that have scoliosis, especially as they get into preteen and adolescent years, they feel very self-conscious. I mean, teens do anyway, but especially if they're crooked, they feel like they look different. They don't look so good. And so some of these survey questions he was taking is, how does your torso look? And how do you feel about yourself? And he said, I look good. It's like, my torso, it looks good. He just has no lack of confidence. It's beautiful, amazing. I don't know exactly how that happened. He's everybody's kid. He's not just mine. I feel blessed because he's mine, but he's everybody's. So I get to share him, but then he's mine in the end. So I'm the real lucky one.
What do you see in his future? How can he progress and grow, and I mean in every way?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I ask myself that a lot. I try, it's almost like still kind of that I'm standing like when I told you when I found out he had arthrogryposis and I would start to think about it and it's like this big abyss of just sad and hopelessness. I can kind of feel that a little bit. And every time I do, I think I'm just going to take it one step. I'm just going to go to where I can see. And it's interesting because I feel like when I do, I can then see another step. Oh, there's something else we can look at. And so the technology, the eye gaze, but I want to get him as independent as I can with computers or whatever it is. And he said he's cute because he'll say what he wants to be when he grows up and it's changed throughout the years, but lately he's like, I want to help people with their electronics. He enjoys working with computers and he's like, that's what I want to do. He's also very hopeful, which makes me happy. He wants to marry and he wants to have his own family and I hope he keeps that always, that's a goal that he's shooting for. Probably something doing electronics. I don't know, with his personality I could see him being a motivational speaker too. And actually
Yeah.
I'm excited, he's going to an elementary school tomorrow to talk for the first time about being a kid with special needs and what that's like. And so I'm kind of excited to see how this goes. I kind of cringe sometimes when he's talking to people because I don't know what he's going to say. So I'm excited about tomorrow and a little apprehensive at the same time because I don't know what he's going to say.
And you'll give my kids rides on his
Yeah,
wheelchair.
he does. He loves to give rides on his wheelchair. He just feels like $1,000,000. You know, most kids can't give rides until they've got a license, but he's got wheels already and he'll take you for a ride.
What would you say to a mother, a family who found this condition in their child? What would you recommend that they start with or advice they would get?
I would say talk to God. Today, it is so easy to abort a child. And I don't mean to talk about that like really casual, but it is. It's very easy to do. And I know that it happens, and I don't want to pass judgment. I can't imagine how my life would be different if I didn't have him. He has brought such a richness that I didn't even know was out there. He is a gift from God, and there's no other way around that. But even before I conceived him, I had a dream about a child, and there was something amiss with him, and I feel like God prepared me. So put God in all your decisions and go to him for comfort. He's there. He knows your situation. He wants to help. And I think a lot of difficult situations, he hopes we turn to him through them. The internet and groups, I don't know, maybe Facebook is old now, but I used Facebook when 9 years ago. Maybe there's newer ones, better ones. but it was a huge resource of practical knowledge and emotional support for me. Tracy Schock, who I mentioned before, she did meetups, and we met other people with arthrogryposis in Ohio. And I just never would have known about any of it if it hadn't been for that Facebook group. Because a lot of times the moms know better with this condition than most of the doctors. It's just so rare. Doctors don't know a lot about it. And so the moms gave me such good knowledge. Be hopeful and look for the blessings. He's blessed our family. My kids they are forever changed because of him, my other kids. He just has been such a good influence. One of the things in that dream was I felt like his name was Joseph. I was going to have a boy. His name was Joseph. And anyway, I had it actually before I had my third child. And so I wanted to name, we found out it was going to be a boy. And I said, this is the one, let's name him Joseph. And Donovan didn't want to name him Joseph. And we kind of argued that pregnancy about the name. And we didn't name him Joseph. And then anyway, he wasn't that baby because he wasn't the baby I saw in my dream, and I was confused and I kind of forgot about it. But then when I was pregnant with this one, Donovan, and we knew he was going to have these issues, Donovan said, let's name him Joseph. He will be like Joseph in Egypt, who went through all these trials, trial after trial, none of which he necessarily deserved. He didn't deserve them, but it happened to him. And he rose up to become second in command only to Pharaoh over all of Egypt. And then he saved his family. And so it's fun because I think of Joseph in Egypt when I think of my little Joseph. And he saves us. He makes us compassionate. He draws us closer as a family. He's just incredible. All these blessings that I didn't necessarily see would happen. So keep the bad thoughts out and let the blessings come in. When you get a special child, you're entitled to special help.
That is perfect. And Joseph brings the light in wherever he is. I love that about him. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for talking about Joseph. And again, if you want to be part of this team of moms that just help each other and learn about real experiences together, please subscribe and be part of this. We are going to say goodbye and just say again to just keep learning.